Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial we're going to continue with our game development series. So we have been learning how to develop a simple space invader game using Python's Pygame library. Okay, so in this tutorial we're going to continue with code collision detection. In the last tutorial we looked at how to create enemies on the screen and how to also be able to shoot the different bullets at the enemy. But now when the enemy when the spacecraft and the bullets get into contact, the alien craft supposed to die, but in this case we are not doing that right now. It just simply goes ahead and passes through the enemy without killing the enemy. So in this tutorial we're going to use collision detection to detect when the two objects have met, meaning when the alien craft has collided with the bullet, then we call that a hit, right? And then the alien craft dies, and then the score for the player gets incremented. So that's basically what you're going to be doing in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and see how we're going to get to get started. So let me just go into my VS Code. I'm inside of the folder that we created last time. So I'm going to go ahead and activate my virtual environment. So I'm going to simply do so I'm going to just simply say source vnv/bin then /activate. So if you're using Windows, this command is not going to work for you. I explained this in the other videos, so you can check out the other videos to activate your virtual environment on Windows. Just do a quick Google search on how to activate your virtual environment on Windows, and that should give you one command that you can write to activate your virtual environment. Okay, so once your virtual environment is activated, I'm going to go ahead and simply run the file. So I'm going to say this is main.py, and then simply run the game. So this is what we have reached so far. So you can see I can move the enemy, I can move the spacecraft, and whenever I shoot the alien doesn't die. The bullet just simply passes through the alien. So what you're going to go ahead and do is to enable the alien to die, and then whenever the bullets and the alien craft collide, the alien should die, and the points for our player should be incremented. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So let's get started to it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and open up my VS Code right here. Open up my VS Code, and once my VS Code is opened up, what I'm going to go ahead and do, we need to run the command to be able to detect the distance between the alien craft and the bullet that has been fired. So if the distance between the alien craft and the spacecraft and the alien craft and the bullet that has been fired, if they are so close together at a certain distance, then we consider that as a collision. So how do we determine the x and the distance between the alien craft and the bullet that has been fired? So we can do this by using a simple mathematics. You probably did this in high school. If you didn't, then well, that's also fine. So we're going to be using the distance formula to detect the collision. So we're going to be detecting the distance of the alien craft and the bullet that has been fired on the x and y coordinate, right? That's basically what we've been using, the x and the y coordinate. So we're going to be using this formula right here, and if you know what the distance formula is, you can just do a quick Google search and read more about the distance formula. But basically this is what the distance formula is right here. So let's assume that we have these 2 points right here. We have this point right here and this point right here, and you're trying to calculate the distance between these 2 points. So that's basically d. You're trying to find the distance on line d. So the formula that we'll use is going to be d equals to square root over x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, all of that under the square root. So that's basically the distance formula. So we're going to use code. We are going to put this in form of code and use this to detect whenever the alien craft gets into contact with the bullet. Okay, so, and then that means that there's a hit, and then the alien craft dies, and then the point for our player gets incremented. Okay, so now let's go actually write the function. I'm going to call def. I'm going to call it collided. So I'm going to take in so to do this we need to take in two values. So we need to take in x1 and x2 and y1 and y2. So let's go ahead and take in those things. So I'm going to take the one of them is going to be for the bullet. So bullet, this is going to be bullet x. We're going to also take bullet y, right? The x and the y coordinate for the bullet. We need to take enemy's x position and the enemy's y position. So that's like that. So once we have these two values, we can use this to calculate the distance. So when we say distance, right, it's going to be equals to, I'm going to import math right here because we need to put this under the square root. So I'm going to go ahead and import math right here. Okay, so once I have math imported, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say math.sqrt means square root. So we're going to find the square root of what? So we're going to find the square root of x1 minus x2, which is going to be for the enemy minus the bullet. Okay, So we're going to go ahead and simply say the enemy's y position, and once we get that, you're going to put that under in the power root, right? You're going to put that square the difference between the x1 and the x2. You're going to square the difference between the x2 and the x1. So to do that, I'm going to simply say math.power. So we're going to say power, okay. And here we're going to simply go ahead and simply pass in the function. We're going to find the difference between the enemy. So we're going to say enemy, sorry, this is going to be enemy x, right? We're going to say enemy x minus the bullet x, and then you're also going to now put this under the square. So this is going to return to us a square root of 2. So you can say comma and 2, but I think by default it has a power of 2, but let's go ahead and specify the power. So we're going to find the difference between x and y. So means basically, sorry, x2 and x1, which is the enemy x and the bullet x, and you're going to raise that to power 2. You're also going to go ahead and simply do a plus operation. So if you go back to the formula right here, we need to add it to the difference between the y and the y2 and the y1 square. So let's go ahead and actually implement this in code. So to implement this in code, what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to simply say pass in another value right here, and I'm going to say math.power again. I'm going to now do enemy y value minus the bullet y value, which is going to be this right here, and then we're going to raise all of that to the power of 2. So that's basically the formula that we have here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in parentheses as well, just to, in case we have any kind of like a board mass error or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in parentheses to specify the order of precedence of operation, right? The order of operation. So once I have the distance calculated, I'm going to go ahead and check if distance. We're going to check if the distance is equals to if the distance is less than, we're going to say if the distance is less than 30, we're going to say that has been collided. So this is some experiment that I did. That's where I got the number 30 from. So you can go ahead and actually try this out and then work with the number that works for you. So I'm going to say true in case the distance is less than 30. Else I'm going to return simply else I'm going to simply go ahead and return false. Okay, so if they have collided, so if the distance between the enemy craft and the bullet is less than 30, then you're going to say it has collided. Else it doesn't collide, you're going to return simply false. So that's basically the collision formula that we have there. So how do we go ahead and use this formula, and why do we use this formula? Since we want this function to be called every time, right? So we're going to go ahead and simply use it in the main while loop. So I'm going to change this. Actually, I think collision is double L, so I have just changed that into double L. So I'm going to copy that function, and you're going to go ahead and call that function right here. So we're going to go ahead and call that function, and just going to go ahead and simply say, let me just keep a comment and we say collision. Let me get that collision detection. Okay, so what I'm going to say, if is collided. So if it's collided, what is collided? You're going to pass in the bullet x. So bullet x, the bullet x. We're also going to go ahead and pass in the bullet y, and you're going to pass in the enemy. This is going to be enemy x, and then you're going to pass in the enemy y. So okay, that's right, enemy y, just like that. So we're going to pass in those values. So if this is true, what you're going to go ahead and simply do is you're going to simply say bullet. You're going to return the bullet to its original position. So it's going to be 480. So if you watch the past tutorials, we say the original position of the bullet is 480, which is also the original position of the player. So it means the player and the bullet are basically on the same position. So we're going to return the bullet to its original position. Now we're going to go ahead and reset the bullet for next round of shots. So we're going to say return bullet for next round. Just say round of shot, just like that. And what you're going to go ahead and do is a bullet underscore state is going to be equals to loaded. So loaded, just like that. Okay, so once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and simply say player underscore score is going to be equals to we're going to increment the score of the player. So we don't have this variable declared yet, so I'm just going to copy it. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this variable, and then I'm going to move it up here. I'm going to say player score. I can just keep it, let me just keep it right here. So I'm going to say player score, and I'm going to keep it here, and by default player score is going to be 0, right, because the player starts, its score is 0. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and simply say player score is 0 for now, and then simply I can go ahead and simply print this out, so you can see the player score increment all the time. So underscore score, just like that. So once it's collided, you're going to set the bullets back to its original Y position, and then set its states back to loaded, means it can be ready to be fired again, and then simply say the score of the player incremented by 1 because that the enemy has been shot, right? So once the enemy has been shot, what do we do? So now let's actually run the game and see if this works before we go on. So I'm going to run the game again. So if I go ahead and try to shoot down this one, so if I shoot it down, you see my score increments. So if you look up here, you can see my score is going to be incrementing every time I shoot the enemy. So you can see my score increments right there. So you can see it increments. Yeah, so it's incrementing now. That works fine. So let me go back to VS Code. Now you can see that even though we shoot down our enemy, right, the enemy doesn't really die, it just stays there and keeps on moving. So how do we make sure that the enemy dies if you shoot it down? So we have to make So how do we make sure that our enemy disappears from the screen, or we spawn a new enemy whenever we shoot down an existing enemy? So we have to spawn a new enemy whenever we shoot down an existing enemy. That's what I think we should do. So let's go ahead and actually do that. So I'm going to go ahead and simply say enemy enemy's X position is going to be equals to random. We need to import random from Python. So I'm going to go ahead and say random. Let me just use random dot rand int. So rand int. And then simply go ahead and pass in a random value. So I'm going to change the value between 64 and 8. Let me just get the value 835. So 835. So I want to spawn an enemy at a random X value based on this range. So if you remember clearly, we discussed these two values earlier on. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and simply paste it one more down, but this now is going to be for the Y axis. So I'm going to paste this again, and this is going to be enemy Y position, and it's going to be the same value. So I'm going to simply create a new enemy, an enemy aircraft spawning in a different position. So make sure that you have random imported. So make sure that you have random imported. VS Code automatically imports it for me. So make sure in your case that you have random imported. Just the command import and then random. If you don't have random imported, then you get errors. Okay. Let me just delete this. I'm not using this. Let me just delete it for now. So make sure that you have random imported there, and then down here you're just going to respawn the enemy in a new position. Okay, so let's go and try to, so whenever you shoot the enemy, now the enemy should respawn in a new different position. So let's go ahead and try this out again. So let me just go in here and then simply run the game again. So let me go and shoot down this one. So if I shoot it down, you can see the enemy respawns in a new area, basically a new enemy. So if I shoot it down again, it respawns in a new area, and if I shoot this again, so it respawns in a new area. Okay, so now we have only one enemy and it's respawning in a new area whenever you shoot it down. So that's basically it. So that's basically it. So yeah, that's basically for shooting the bullets and doing the collision detection and using that to detect the hits and then be able to respawn the enemy in a different location on the screen. So that's basically what I wanted us to cover in this tutorial. So in the next tutorial, we'll go ahead and look at how to have multiple enemies, because right now we just have one enemy moving across the screen. So in the next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and see how we can implement multiple enemies in our game. So yeah, that's basically it, and thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Keep safe.